Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of PodSaveChocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host and your moderator. I'm also the creator and the publisher of thechocolatelife.com. And today we're going to be talking about a continuing series. It is my monthly news and AMA, but at the same time, we're going to be talking about the high cost of expensive cocoa. And I want to just jump right into it. But before I do, remind everybody that no matter where you're watching today, go into the comments. So the live chat on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook and let me know where in the world you're connecting from. We'll get that shout out on screen. And if you have questions about anything I'm going to talk about, that throw into the comments and we'll get the question up on the screen and asked and answered today. And even if all you want to do is just throw a little chocolate bar emoji, just let us know. Let us know that you're watching today. It's greatly appreciated. And with that, let's just jump right into it. So for every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I put together a post on the chocolate life. This is episode number 42. I'm going to make an obligatory Douglas Adams, answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything. Maybe cocoa and chocolate are those answers. Is the food equivalent to 42? But that's as far as I'm going to go today with Douglas Adams. But there is an episode for there's a post for every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate. This is today's. And it includes links to where you can watch this. You're watching live. You can watch it after the fact. Everything is archived on YouTube, LinkedIn, and on Facebook. And then there's an overview. And so the question for today, so this is part of my monthly news and Ask Me Anything Roundup, we're going to talk about price volatility in cocoa and chocolate or cocoa and what it means. So just a general observation before we jump in that cocoa futures have declined in recent weeks. Okay, that was really very, very true as of 2 days ago. It's less true now, right? And the question is the decline, or the questions are the declines in the price of cocoa futures a good thing? Are they a bad thing? Is it a mixed blessing, in quotes? We can ask the question, what role can government cocoa boards play when it comes to futures volatility? Is there a role? Do government cocoa boards, in the end, cause more harm than good? It would be an interesting question to ask in this context. And what about fair trade pricing schemes? Not screams. What about fair trade pricing schemes and the current industry darling, which is around living income? Right, so having set the stage, let's go take a look. So a couple of days ago, this is, on the end of April, I got this notice in my news that says cocoa futures fall nearly 10%. So, this is, pretty interesting because everybody is freaking out about the price of cocoa and where it's going. Cocoa supplies are tight. The price of derivatives, cocoa butter especially, has just been through the roof over the last couple of months. We've seen a 345% increase in the price of cocoa in the last year. But cocoa futures appear to be falling. And so if we take a look at what's going on, so we can see, if we look at this, it looks like, cocoa futures have been in this huge ramp. And by the way, the link is in today's post, so you can follow this up yourself. It looks like it's been hit, peaked around a little over 12,000, right? And it dropped precipitously. There's that 10% drop or so at the end of last month, right into this. But if we go and take a look at what's happened in the last week, right, this is where it is. So this is, even if we look at this in a monthly view, right, it's not nearly as dramatic just how volatile the price of cocoa is. We have to go to the last week, and what we'll do is we'll find that it basically in one day, we went from somewhere between 8,000 and 8,500. We went down to under $7,000 a ton, but we find in the last day we've gone from 8,500 a ton, and we're now at over 9,200. So what is this volatility come from? And so let's look at this in a slightly different way. Let's look at it in a tabular way. And so here I have a table which talks about, so these are the 20-day moving averages, and we're looking at intraday trades. So if there's an increase in the price of July cocoa, we'll see during this, while it's up on the screen, we'll see that increase. But we'll look at the cash price. I mean, the 20-day moving average is a little over 10,000 a ton. We're at about $8,700 a ton now. That's what is this, a 13.5% range, which is pretty huge. We see that May futures, their volatility is in a little narrower range. And then we're looking at the futures prices between now and the end of March, and we're going, okay, they expected to be, under $6,000 a metric ton. And so the question we need to ask ourselves is, fundamentally, what has changed in the market to cause the kind of volatility we're seeing? What happened, right, last week and the week before that caused this kind of volatility? Oh, sorry, let's in the market. What happened? I mean, what's going on here? And the answer, and I asked this question in a couple of different places. I didn't get any really good answers from people who are at trading desks, or I didn't get any satisfying answers from people who are at trading desks. But the answers that I got were, number one, seemed to be, okay, there's a natural ceiling at around $12,000 a ton, right? And then just even the big buyers, so big chocolate, big cocoa, said there is a limit even for us, right? We're just not going to pay. We're done. We're not playing this game anymore. And that what we're looking here is big cocoa and big funds that had been investing in this are literally profit taking, right? So there's a sense in which people believe that the mid-harvest in Africa is going to be better than it has been forecast. And so there's going to be some relief. There's going to be some pressure, which is taken off the demand curve because of increased supplies, right? So people have, baked into their equations about pricing what the real effect of the EUDR is going to be on in the course of the next year. So there's some uncertainty that's been taken out of the market, but it appears to be, okay, there is a natural limit. Big buyers are going into countries and basically saying, we don't care what the condition of the cocoa is. It could be moldy, it could be mildewy, it could be unfermented. We don't care. We're just going to buy all the cocoa, and there's no more cocoa to buy. And because there's no more cocoa to buy, we've hit the limit in terms of what people are willing to pay, right? So that appears to be, but those aren't market fundamentals, right? So the market is reacting to what it is that's going on the ground, but there's nothing technical going on in the market. And if we were to go and compare this with the price of sugar or the price of oil or other commodities, we'd find that there's not this kind of volatility compared with other commodities, which do have an impact on the price of cocoa and the price of chocolate, right? Obviously, the price of oil is going to have an impact on the cost of shipping. So we can take a look at that. So, what happens, and what Bloomberg is saying, I don't have a Bloomberg account. Let me click on this. I don't have a Bloomberg account, but what they're doing is they're talking about liquidity issues. So fewer companies can afford the rising costs to back their trades, right? That could be one of the fundamentals that's changing things. And but the market is still beset by shortages due to issues in West Africa. So why the volatility? It appears to be profit taking because it appears that we've hit a ceiling. I did a mention that there was one trader who thought that the price was going to hit 20,000. It looks like that's not going to happen, at least not this round. Now, it should be noted that all of this is based upon the mid-harvest. What's happening in the next 3 months. We really don't know what's happening there. And in that case, none of the fundamentals have in fact changed, right? None of this is about fixing climate change, right? And none of this is about fixing illegal labor, right? In the cocoa sector. And none of this is about, okay, we have artisan gold mining, what's called galamsey, which is attributed to the destruction of lots of farms in Ghana, just like farms which might have had 10,000 trees now have fewer than 100 trees, right? So there's no fundamental change in what's going on in the market, except perhaps what's happening is there are reports, and I'll get to that. This is something that is in a Nestle article that says that farmers are now engaged in better agricultural practice on the farm. They're doing a better job pruning. And by doing a better job of pruning, what they're doing is they're increasing yields. So they're investing a little more time and energy in their farms. And so they're expecting yields to be a little higher. Will they go back to anywhere near normal? We don't know. Will there be a weather event, right, over the next couple of months? No one knows. It's so this sort of pause in the storm of cocoa, pricing, volatility, we don't know what's going to happen, right? And what we do is we find, um, also there are other investments that appear to be going on. So people are saying, well, we do need to replace cocoa on less productive parts of our farm, but that's all 3 to 5 at least years out, depending upon the variety that's being planted and what's going on. So, how much of this is wishful thinking? I don't know the answer to that question. We'll know in a couple of months, right, when the mid-harvest in West Africa is over. But the industry appears to be bullish, right? So this is Mintech. It's a market research firm, which is different because it's market research as opposed to press and PR, which is really important distinction. But they're talking about big companies. And in this case, they tend to be mostly American companies. So they talk about Hershey. Actually, Nestle is a Swiss company. Mondelez, have they been grappling with a high cost? Right? They talk about what are the price rises, what are they attributable to? They're reporting everything in terms of pound sterling, and this is another challenge that we do need to discuss. Is that I don't know what the exchange rate is between pound sterling and euros and US dollars at any given time, and so because of that, it's really really difficult to know what's going on. And even in the same price, for some reason they're pricing cocoa in 1977 at 48 at US dollar terms, and then they're reporting in the same paragraph for some reason in pounds sterling, right? So they're talking about different markets. The other thing to consider here, and it's as a market research firm, I don't understand why they're continuing to do this, is that this is the price in US dollars in 1977 in constant dollar terms, right? So we're not actually taking that 4,800 in 1977 and saying, what has been inflation over the course of the last 50 years, right? And what is that, what does that mean in terms of adjusted dollars, which is we now is at least 20,000 a ton. So it's there. But, again, this is worth reading because it comes from a market research perspective as opposed to a press and PR perspective. And so you'll get some data points, right, that you may agree or may disagree with, but they will contrast with what it is that the industry is telling you what's going on. And basically, that despite everything that's going on, the big cocoa, big chocolate is bullish on the business of chocolate. Just take it for what it's worth. All right. And before we go to the next point, I want to do a quick shout out to Stephen Loudon from the UK. I've had the great good fortune of spending some time with Stephen at the chocolate show in London. I had a chance to taste much of his work and get a chance to speak with him. I haven't been in London for a chocolate show since 2018. So it's been a while, Stephen. Thanks very much for connecting today, letting me know where things are. And listen, let me know, what the mood is among your colleagues in London and the UK. What are their thoughts about where cocoa and chocolate are? And are you hopeful for the future, or are you really, really wondering, what you're going to do next? How you're going to be able to survive and what it means for your business. Right, so thanks again for that. So, I mean, this is sort of a no-brainer, but this is the Guardian from Trinidad and Tobago. They're basically say the cocoa industry must become adaptable, and so this is the article that sort of got me to thinking, what fundamentals have changed? Right? What fundamentals have changed about the market, about what's going on in West Africa, what's going on in other parts of the world, right? Are we sanguine about the next harvest merely as a short term, right? Because, it looks like the harvest might be better, right? Are we thinking that, climate change is no longer going to be an issue. We're not going to have an El Nino event, which is going to really muck things up, right? We've solved, all sorts of issues. So the cocoa industry must become adaptable. This is interesting because number one, Trinidad's important role in the history of cocoa and chocolate. Obviously, it's where the Trinitaria was created on the island. Trinidad used to have a cocoa marketing board. They dissolved the cocoa marketing board many years ago. So it's a cocoa marketing board like CocoaBod, where they had a monopsony. So they were the only people who could buy cocoa. They set the prices. They were the only people who could sell cocoa. They did away with it, just sort of unceremoniously, and with no plans about what would replace it. And so the cocoa market in Trinidad just basically collapsed for like 20 years or something like that. And it was recently replaced in 2018, 2019 with a marketing board. So their job is not to set prices, but their job is to market Trinidadian cocoa. So it's worthwhile understanding what Trinidad thinks about what it is that the cocoa industry needs to do, just from this perspective as a producing country, right? So, Mintel or Mintech is not from a producing country. They're not, that's not the perspective they're writing from. Their perspective is writing about market research associated with really, really big companies, right? For which they're getting paid a lot of data, right? But what I want to discuss next, I think, is the wrong answer to this, the wrong approach to this, right? Or not the wrong, but a wrong approach to this. And it comes out of thinking about a comment that Brett Beach, who's one of the founders, originally of Matacast, now Beyond Good, mentioned about the chocolate scorecard. And there's no link to the chocolate scorecard here. I will put a link to the chocolate scorecard, at least my episode of PodSaveChocolate about the chocolate scorecard, which has got lots of other links in it. And I'll do that after this episode is over, right? Is that Brett pointed out that the approach of the chocolate scorecard is to normalize things. What it says is we're going to accept the status quo, that things are the way they are, and we're going to reward good policy towards change. But we're not actually going to do anything, number one, which really challenges the big companies and their positions, right? And we're not going to suggest that, we need to change the system. Now, for example, one of the reasons why the current system is broken, and the current system is based upon abusive practices which have been allowed to fester over the course of the last 500 years. It's basically, colonial imperialism, right, on the farm. I mean, I think it's, sort of ironic in many respects that we have Cadbury, who in the late 1800s, early 1900s discovered that there was plantation or slavery in his plantations on the island of Sao Tome, right? And said, I'm no longer buying any cocoa from Sao Tome, and shifted his focus over to West Africa, particularly, Ivory Coast. And what, the seed of slavery, if it didn't already exist in cocoa plantations in West Africa, was transplanted into West Africa, and it has continued to fester, right? And the question becomes, why are we perpetuating this abusive system, right? It has contributed to deforestation. It has contributed to illegal child labor, right? The big companies, right, their entire business models are dependent upon this. Why are we saying, okay, we're just going to normalize that, and it's the baseline, and we're going to accept it, right? And then we're going to reward sort of small incremental changes, which may be greenwashing and may not be greenwashing, right? Why aren't we saying right now to CocoaBod, hey, CocoaBod, you need to change your business model, right? Your business model is you set the price at what? $1,800 a ton, $2,200 a ton, and you do that maybe once a year, and you just like ignore the market, right? And you're going to say, here's the price we're paying at the farm gate price. At the farm gate, and it doesn't matter what the price of cocoa is, we're just going to ignore that, right? And we're going to take the lion's share. So when cocoa is at 10,000 a metric ton, the farmers are still getting paid less than 3,000 a metric ton farm gate. Where is that $7,000 a metric ton going? And why is it going to CocoaBod, and why is it going to all the intermediaries, and why is literally almost none of it going to farmers, right? Why? Why is that system allowed to be perpetuated? Why are we saying this is okay? And this is where the drop in price of cocoa, right? And I'm gonna do this just really, really quickly, um, just for some emphasis. And this is where the recent drops in the price of cocoa and the reduction of pressure on the prices becomes really, really problematic for me, right? And I hope it becomes problematic for you, which is if the price of cocoa goes back down over the course of the next year, there's going to be no incentive to change the basic abusive system, right? And what, as a group, what we need to do is we need to challenge big chocolate. We need to challenge big cocoa and say, hey, fundamentally, the system is broken. It's an abusive system. It's based on colonial economic imperialism. So we have neo-colonial economic imperialism. That is the system that exists, right? It is oppressive. It is abusive. It has led to deforestation. It has led to illegal labor, child slavery, things like that. Why are we tolerating that, right? Why can't we take a pause and say, whoa, right? The price of cocoa has just gone really crazy. What can we do to fix the system, right? And any attempt, right, in my opinion, and I hope to convince you as well, that seeks to normalize the status quo should be rejected out of hand, right? These are not tools which are going to fix the abusive system, right? So I'm sitting here, this is the issue for me. I've spent the last 25 years working in the industry. I've been a promoter of specialty chocolate, craft, artisan, bean to bar chocolate, whatever you want to call it, since 2000. Well, actually, since 1999, right, professionally. And I'm looking at what's going on now, and I'm going, one of the worst outcomes for farmers, for specialty chocolate makers, so the small craft chocolate makers, guys like Mike King of Encore Coffee in Kansas City, Missouri. Hey, Mike, good to talk to you today. Good to have you here. Is that next year or 3 years from now, we come out the other side of this? There's a new normal price for cocoa. It's probably somewhere between $5 and $8 a kilo for commodity. I was thinking about this earlier. I do morning walks, and I have a chance to think about what it is that I want to say during my morning walks. And I realized that Frank Holman, who's the founder of Shoko, comes from McKinsey. Is one of the founders of the Shoko project that is now Ingeman down in Nicaragua. Did a net present value analysis of the cost of a new cocoa farm, and he said, the cost of cocoa should be at least $8 a kilo, right, for a specialty variety. And I'm going to see if I can find any of the background that Frank created for this. There is a slide that he presented at Shokoa, and I'm going to see if I can find it. I'm going to put it in the post for today. But right, we don't want to get to the new normal price, whatever the new normal price is, and say, well, big chocolate, right? You have been fighting your acceptance of responsibility for illegal labor and your voluntary obligations to fix that problem under Harkin Engel for more than 20 years, right? Now is the time for you guys to go and actually commit to fixing the problem, right? And believe it or not, they are not going to. They are not going to fix the problem, right, on their own, right? It is going to be the consumers, right, us, people who are passionate about specialty chocolate, the way people are passionate about specialty coffee. We're going to be the people who are going to provide the impetus and the incentive to get big chocolate to care. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this, is to set the stage, to say, this is what we need to do now, right? And before I go back to sharing anything, just a quick shout out to Stephen again. Let's hope the show comes back soon. Stephen, I don't know if you heard this or not, but several years ago, this is like 2016, maybe, so more than several years ago, because the last time I was in London for a show was in 2018. The group Event International, which ran the show, the Salon du Chocolat in Paris and the Salon du Chocolat in Tokyo, bought out Nudge, PR. So Kate Johns and her company that founded the Chocolate Show and Chocolate Week in London more than a decade earlier. And COVID and other things fell apart. But recently, the gentleman in the company that bought out Francois Janté and Sylvie Douce, who were the original owners of the group Event International, actually just sold again. Right. So now the group that organizes the Messe, which is the big exposition hall in Frankfurt, so the organization Frankfurt Messe, now owns the Salons du Chocolat brand. And they're going to be organizing the one in Paris this year and the one in New York. And so, it's all going to be up to this new organization, Frankfurt Messe, to decide whether or not there's going to be a big chocolate show like the one that Kate organized anytime in the near future. There's no way of knowing. People I've talked to aren't sanguine about what's going on. The future, they're not sanguine about the future of the Paris show because a number of the long-term exhibitors who have been the bedrock of support for that show weren't there last year and are not planning to be there this year. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what's going on. Yeah, absolutely. London I was there last October. It's got an amazing chocolate scene. I mean, even though I'm a New Yorker, right, and I spent quite a bit of time in the New York City metro area, 40 years, and love being in Manhattan and love the energy and love the outer boroughs, even Staten Island. It turns out that London has a much more vibrant chocolate scene than New York does, and it's really, really quite a treat to be in London and to be able to partake of it. It's just a real quick aside. Anyway, so one of the things before I do that, you're watching PodSaveChocolate, right? And my name's Clay Gordon, and if you're watching this and you haven't done a thumbs up on the video and commented with a chocolate bar to let me know, whether you're watching on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, please do give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel if you're on YouTube. Follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook. I will definitely follow back. And then also go over to the Chocolate Life and become a member, because this episode, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is in fact sponsored by the members of the Chocolate Life. I don't do advertising here. I'm not doing Patreon. It's all about supporting thechocolatelife.com, which makes this possible. So I appreciate everybody who has been a member and continues to be a member. Like, when did I start? January of 2008, which is when the Chocolate Life went online. So it's been a while, and I'm here because of people like you who have supported everything I've done over the course of the decades. Anyway, getting back to today's. So one of the things that came out of the recent World Cocoa Foundation meeting, and this is something that had to be in the works for quite some time in order to be able to announce it at this level of fleshed out detail during the World Cocoa Foundation meeting, was this announcement, right? So World Cocoa Foundation is one of a number of partners. We're going to talk about the power of data, and a standardized method of collecting data on cocoa farmers will improve lives. Right now, I am going to guess that because the Royal Tropical Institute in the Netherlands, in Amsterdam, is a part of this project, that the current effort, which I will explain to you in a little more detail, is built upon this study, Demystifying the Cocoa Sector in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. Right, which is a landmark study. I mean, it's an amazing study. And one of the things that they did with this study is they open sourced all the data. Right, so that if you want to run your own analyses on the data, you can run your own analyses. And it's actually, the data is uploaded at a place. It used to be, I hadn't checked it in the last year, where there were analytical tools, and you didn't actually have to know anything about R or have a seat or license for SAS or any of these other statistical database analysis kinds of tools. You could actually do some of this analysis, cut through, and do your own analysis online, right? And as much and the detail is amazing, and they publish all of the questionnaires and they go through all the methodology and they let everybody know exactly what's going on. And they made the data publicly available. I mean, just really, really powerful stuff. And I can't say, I know one of the lead researchers, her name is Anna Lavin. Anna has been, a colleague of mine working at Chocoa in Amsterdam. And so it's really, really this was really, really a satisfying study for me to look through and to be able to play with the data because I'm a data geek. Really, really love it. But so I am thinking that what's going on with the World Cocoa Foundation is going to be built upon a foundation of what it is that Kit did in this demystifying the cocoa sector. One of the things that I'm hoping with this, so they're now going and talking about cocoa household income study methodology. Here's where we come back. There's this huge press release for it. It's like you can learn more about what's going on here, right? And what's real challenging about this for me, again, here's Kit's announcement of this same thing. You can find it. So Anna Lavin is one of the authors of this. She's going to be one of the lead researchers on the project. You can learn all about this. So it's a sector-wide approach, right? And one of the things that I don't know from this is I don't know what the extent of the funding is and whether this will be limited to West Africa or whether it will be done globally. I mean, it would be great. I mean, the original demystifying report was only about Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana. There hasn't been an update to it in at least 5 years, and that's way too long, right? Because, you'd like to know, has there been any progress? And this is one thing I'm going to challenge Anna and anybody who might be watching that's associated with this, is that you need to make sure that when you present this data or you present the results of this research, that there is in fact a direct correlation, right? Obviously, we can't pull causation out of correlation, but what you do is you say, here has been substantive change, and do it in dollar terms, right? And not just constant dollar terms, but adjusted for inflation dollar terms, and let everybody know at the very beginning that we're doing everything in this currency and we're going to stick to this currency. And here's the exchange rates that we're using, right? In terms of doing stuff. I mean, be incredibly transparent with this stuff and let us know, have there been any improvements in the last couple of years? Just what? There's been all this talk over the last couple of years about how much improvement there's been, right, by all these actors, right? And the question is, has there been any? And two, what can it be attributed to, right? And what changes in mindset, what changes in attitude have come about as a result of this? Now, it turns out I'm going to go and, right, if you want to, right, I have downloaded this PDF and embedded it into the post for today. So if you want to go download this and take a look at it, it's 58 pages, right? So we can see that the Wageningen University kit, which is the Koninklijke Instituut Tropical, the Royal Tropical, Koninklijke King Royal in Dutch, also GIZ, the World Cocoa Foundation. These are the people who are supporting it financially. And you can go through it. It's Creative Commons license, so I don't have any problems with putting it here as long I'm not exploiting it. I'm not commercial, but you can get an idea for what it is that they're doing, and you can see the methodology and all this kind of stuff. And it's 50 pages, and you can go through and figure it out and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, but this is wrong, in my opinion. This is the wrong thing to be looking at, right? This is studying what household income is the wrong thing to do, because what it does is it normalizes an abusive system, right? It's not saying we need to fix everything, right? It's saying, what is the minimum price we should be paying, right? But we're not going to change anything else about the system, right? If these guys came out, if the result of this was CocoaBod needs to be abandoned, some other thing needs to come about in its place, I would have a lot of respect for the people who are doing this. It's not going to happen because World Cocoa Foundation is one of the sponsors, right? Just not going to happen. Just right. And this is what I worry about. I worry about, again, being totally un-PC about this, right? This is a bunch of white people in the global north telling a bunch of brown people in the global south what's fair. This is what we've decided is what your living income should be, right? And, you know, who are we to say that, right? You know, it's just, listen, if the market is the market, get cocoa bod out of the way. If the market, I mean, I was talking to somebody who is down in Latin America in a big market down there, and they're saying, listen, every individual farmer is saying, listen, I'd be happy to, if you want to come and buy from me next month when I've collected, but if somebody comes tomorrow and is paying me more than you plan to pay me a month from now, I'm going to sell my cocoa out from under you. Right? You've got these little farmers who are basically saying to big companies, right? Like, you guys used to have the pricing authority and leverage, and you don't have it anymore, right? We hold the advantage, and they're saying, we've invested, we've paid down our debt, right? So we're not debt, we don't have debt anymore. It's like, it's really, really amazing what happens when there is an open market, right? And we don't have an open market. Cocoa bod and the futures exchanges, right, are in fact depressing and controlling the price globally, right? I can't have a market price for commodity bulk cocoa, which is markedly different in Malaysia for Malaysian cocoa than it is for cocoa coming from Latin America than it is coming from West Africa. That's the purpose, right, of what's going on, right? And what we need to do is not say, living income is what we should be focusing on right now. No, that's not what we should be focusing on right now. We should be focusing on, where is the system broken? How do we break up the system? How do we fix the endemic, embedded abuses of the system that over the past 500 years have led to the kind of deforestation we're seeing, leading to climate change that we're seeing, the kind of abuses of the system that for the last 20 plus years, the industry has recognized, hey, we got some, pretty bad labor practices, but they haven't been held accountable for them, for actually fixing the problem. As a matter of fact, we can say that the incidence of illegal labor in place in West Africa is bigger now than it was 10 years ago. How could that possibly happen when there's all this focus and there's all this energy? And it's because the people who have been, for the most part, writing about it and controlling the narrative about it have normalized what it is that's going on and not recognized exactly what it is. And while I agree that Tony's Chocolate Only is a brilliant single issue marketer, their entire business model is dependent upon the system being broken, right? Because if they actually fixed illegal labor, I mean, what would they do next, right? They've been slavery all the time. Where do they go? I mean, their entire business model is built upon the manufacturing efficiencies of big chocolate partners like Barry Callebaut, right? So Tony's is not really there, right? If you look at who their investors are and what they've invested in and all this kind of stuff, I mean, it's like, they can't do it. Right? They are dependent upon the continuation of the problem they want to solve, right? They're not there to effectuate lasting long-term change. Now, they're really good about marketing about it, right? I will give them that. It's a single issue company. They've got over 100 million in sales. They've got 100,000 or more special friends, right? So they have been very, very successful in what they've done in the consuming country, right? But they haven't made anything like a corresponding impact in producing countries. They source from 9 co-ops in 2 countries, like 10, 12,000 farming families. They purchase, according to their last annual report, on average, less than 1 metric ton per farming family. It's like, oh, yay, I made an extra $100 this year or $200, whatever the number is, right? And the work that they're doing is based upon the fair trade price. And I'm going, fair trade price? Fair trade makes a whole lot of sense when the price dives below 2,500 a metric ton. But what the heck value is fair trade bringing when the price is 10,000 a ton, right? That whole model is broken, right? That whole, the whole certification model associated with social equity and social performance is completely broken. And as an organization, they're not nimble enough, like CocoaBot is not nimble enough to be able to react to market changes, which are as volatile as the ones we've been seeing in the last year. I mean, they're 19th century. They're not even 20th century, right, old. They're 19th century old in terms of their inability to be able to deal with the problems. And the thing that I worry about with World Cocoa Foundation and GIZ and all these other people, and much as I really, really respect what Anna has done and her group at KIT have done with the demystifying study, is that I worry that it is going to be used to normalize the status quo rather than challenge it. We're normalizing the idea of living income, right? And that we, right, as people who live in consuming countries, right, get to help dictate what a living income is for a farmer, right, in a producing country. I think that's immoral, and it needs to be called out, and that's why I'm calling it out today, right? I want to say to just, and I will be having a conversation with some of the principals in this study and letting them know what it is that I think about it, right? And I'm not going to shy away with it. When I was a guest of Barry Callebaut in Venice, right, in 2022 at the global launch of second generation chocolate, I was sitting, right, standing, wasn't sitting. I was sitting in Venice next to the then CEO of Barry Callebaut, since been fired, who was also at that point, part of the senior management team at the World Cocoa Foundation. And so I'm standing, I'm a guest of Barry Callebaut. I'm staying in a really, really nice hotel. They're paying all expenses, travel expenses. They didn't compensate me for anything, so I did not receive any money, but they paid for my hotel. They paid for my flight from Lisbon back to the United States at the time. And I'm sitting there and I'm looking up on him, very, very tall man was Peter Boone, next to the global head of marketing, Boss Smith. And I'm saying to Peter, hey, now that you are in your joint role as CEO and at the World Cocoa Foundation, are you going to commit to Barry Callebaut meeting its voluntary commitments under Harkin Engel during your tenure as CEO? Right? I don't have a problem whatsoever, right, making those calls and confronting people with those kinds of questions, right? And that's what I want to do when it comes to this. Yes, understanding the economic drivers in households is really interesting. I don't want it to be the basis for the living income discussion, right? Oh, you farmers, you can live on $3,000 a year. So what we're going to do is we're going to use that as justification for the price of cocoa. I want to make sure, and I want everybody who's involved in this study, right, to be able to say that's not what we're doing here, right? Because in a free market, this would not be a necessary discussion. In a free market, the farmer would be able to say, hey, well, the price at New York is $9,700 a ton. So when somebody comes to your farm to be able to buy cocoa from you, you're going to say, I want $9,700 a ton, right? That's what I want. A discount because you got to ship it someplace, but that's what I want. And that's what happened to some extent in Nigeria, right? That farmers who were aware of what the price is got the pricing leverage, right? In Latin America, in many places, they got the pricing leverage and they took advantage of it for the first time, right? As the price goes down, as we start to normalize it, as things become a little more settled, we can't let that dynamic settle back into the old abusive, coercive system, right? That is not figuring out, okay, well, with EDR, it's about newly deforested lands. How are we going to pay for all the deforested lands that has happened over the last 20 years? Like, right. And, it's like, there are lots there, just like there's, analysis of the income gap, a living income, all of this kind of stuff. It's like, this is what I don't want to see happen, right, as a result of this. And this is what I think none of us, especially those people who are small, especially small makers, right, who are completely dependent, like have no control. You can't hedge, you don't have the resources to play in the futures market, right? You have no control over the creation of derivatives. It's like you're completely dependent on what else is going on there. You have no control over the price of your core ingredients. If you don't take advantage of what's going on right now to get some control, it's going to be a problem 3 years from now, 4 years from now, from 5 years now, and maybe even 6 months from now, right? If the mid-harvest is not up to what people think it will be. just a quick note. So before I continue, a real quick note, shout out to David Mina, joining from South Salem, New York. South Salem. David, I think this might be the first time I've seen you in a live chat here during an episode. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Thanks for letting us know where you are in the world today. I'm glad you think that the information is helpful. Just a question is this surprising to you that that I have this take, or that anyone has this take on it, and some sensibility? What sort of other questions might you like to see asked? Right, and we're going to get there. I want to know that this is the May Ask Me Anything like news roundup issue, right? And I've been like going on about what I think is the huge news, and it is the existential threat to the existence of specialty chocolate, right? There are a bunch of other news, if we get to it, kind of posts. I want to do a quick shout out on all the winners at the Good Food Awards in the chocolate and confectionery categories. So you can find out this is chocolate, and if you scroll down, you can go to confections. One of the things which is interesting about this year's lineup is that there are a number of winners in both categories. So, for example, Monsoon Chocolate, which is Tucson, Arizona, couple of hours south of where I am right now, won an award in both the confections and the chocolate category. So I think that crossover is really, really good and really, really helpful. And I wanted to say that this is not the entry, right, that I remember many years ago. So I was an original member of the committee that decided what was good in the chocolate category and the confections category in the Good Food Awards. This is going back to 2012 or something like that. I forget exactly when, right? But I was a judge in 2015, and there was at my table a chocolate-covered fresh honeycomb, right? Chocolate-covered raw honeycomb. And it was absolutely amazing. I was like astonishing. It was just, the texture of the chocolate and the texture of the honey and the texture of the wax and the sweetness and the bitterness. It was just an amazing thing. And we were, my group, we were sitting down. I was the head judge at the table, and I'm going, listen, do we want to award, outside the box thinking, right? So this is something that innovation in a sense. So do we want to reward innovation, or do we want to recognize? Excuse me. Interesting. We're having a short internet thing going on here. So I lost my screen for a second. Or, do we want to reward innovation, which is what's going on here? Or is what we want to do is we want to, give this to yet another salted butter caramel, right? And the decision was taken out of my hands because our table voted for, if not this product, a product like this. And I don't know anything about honeymoon chocolates. I mean, I just saw this as I was looking around and going, yum, 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 I want this, right? Is that somebody at another table said, well, how could honey be good, right? Because how could honey be good, right? It's like, which was not our remit as judges. I mean, if it made it into the judging, the people who do the triage, looking at all the entries and figure things out, they've already decided that it meets all the entry criteria. It's not up to us to decide if this is good under the terms of the competition. That's not our role as judges. And so some other table had an opportunity to say, we're not going to reward this. I am really, really happy, because if you've never had this before, it's this kind of product is phenomenal. And so I'm really, really happy that it finally was recognized. Again, whether it was this company or another company, I don't know. So what I want to do here is a couple of things. Number one, which is there has been recent discussion about what I call alt chocolate, right? So it is a chocolate that is not chocolate because it contains no cocoa ingredients, or no ingredients that are recognized by cocoa, either in the Code of Federal Regulations here in the United States or the Codex Alimentarius. And so we've heard of companies like Win-Win, Planet A Foods, and things like that. And here's an article in a magazine I subscribe to called Food Dive, right? Because they got lots of interesting things. And they're talking about the companies, and there's another link to another article where this company, Voyage Foods, right, it's listed here, just closed around $52 million right? And part of what it is they're doing is they're making cocoa-free chocolates. So Planet A Foods, Voyage Foods. We have California Cultured, which is using cell culturing rather than fermentation, precision fermentation. So we've got that. Number one is I've tasted two of them, right? They are, if your benchmark is cheap industrial candy, this will stand up, right? If that's your benchmark, this is cheap industrial candy, right? What I want to say, however, is we can, if we are concerned about cocoa farmers, we cannot allow big chocolate a back door to say we're just going to replace 1,000 metric tons of cocoa with, the equivalent of barley and carob or whatever the agricultural inputs are that are used to make these things. We can't give big chocolate an out. We can't let them say, hey, cocoa farmers, we're sorry. We know we've been abusive to you. We've kept the prices down. You guys have lived in poverty. All this, there's been illegal labor. We've enslaved kids, enslaved adults, for the last 50 years. We can't give big chocolate an out, right? By saying it's okay, right, to do this. We can't normalize this, right? There might make a sense for people who have specific dietary conditions and all that kind of stuff, but we don't need tech unicorns in the food industry in chocolate, right? We need to avoid them at all costs, right? Because we do not want to give a very large company, right, that has been abusive, Nestle, Mars, Mondelez, right? All the companies associated with those brands, Barry Callebaut. We do not want to give them the back door to abandon their responsibilities to cocoa farmers, right? The ones that they have accumulated over the course of the last 50 years, right? So, right, that's where I am with this, right? It's an interesting idea. Technically, again, from a flavor perspective, the two I've tasted, wouldn't fool a chocolate connoisseur, but if you're looking for a thin covering around a candy bar, or you're looking for it inside a candy shell, especially with a nut or something like that, a 5-year-old's not going to care, right? And if you're adding butyric acid to it, like to make it taste like it tasted 125 years ago, you're not going to care, right? But we can't let big chocolate do this. Right? We just cannot let big chocolate to do this. We cannot let them to abandon their responsibilities. Now, something that says to me, okay, right, there's some hope here. This is another article, again, from the same magazine, Food Dive, that says Beyond Meat sees 2024 as a pivotal year despite grim Q1 results. As a matter of fact, they've had 8 straight quarters of declining sales and revenues, right? Which says that even though there is a lot of interest, again, tech interest, and there's been modest consumer interest in what are called plant-based meat, which is an oxymoron, right? It's meat or it's plants. It's not plant-based meat. It's alt.meat, right? In the same way it's alt.chocolate, right? And alt.milk, right? So that locution, I really, really like. They're confident sales will pick up in the second half of the year. They might. Right? He's confident. This is one of the things he's making on his earnings call to his investors. They're hoping it. I don't know what fundamentals he cited that says things will change. There's more discretionary income, right? Are people not buying this because it's 2.5 times the price of anything else? I mean, we need to think about that in terms of chocolate. If we abandon the cocoa farmer and then people go, shrug, I don't care about this stuff, right? Because it doesn't taste like I remember chocolate tasting like. What do we do? I was like, farmers get screwed both ways. And so, while I understand the market for alt.meat products and alt.dairy products, I want to be really careful that these end up being technology plays. People are looking for tech unicorns. They want something where they'll get 5,000% on their money inside of 2 years and sell out and make a fortune, right? The fact that cocoa is traded on the commodities market is like a problem. The fact that any food product is traded on the commodities market and is subject to special regulations, I understand why it's done in terms of price hedging. But when it comes to the lives of farmers, they have no leverage. They can't participate in the game. It would be really different. Hey, Ghana, set up a $200 million cocoa hedge fund, right? And then have all the proceeds go to underwrite your activities rather than forcing the farmers to pay for it. I would be happy with that, right? If CocoaBod was self-funded and they just said, hey, farmers can charge whatever they want to, whatever the market says the cocoa is worth, the farmer gets that at the farm gate. CocoaBod, change your business model. Change your business model now, right? If you want to be relevant 10 years from now, CocoaBod, right, you need to be, as the Trinidad Guardian said, sorry about that, I'm going back and forth between screens, as the Trinidad Guardian said, the industry must be adaptable, right? And that includes the government cocoa boards, right? Really, really, really important that this be taken across. Not that I am sanguine, not that I think that this will happen at all over the course of a little while. So another one, Ian Carl. Don't know where in the world you're connecting from, Ian. Alt ingredients, I think I brought this up on Reddit. If you're part of r/chocolate, that subreddit, then alt ingredients and alt chocolate have been talked about. I know that I push back against them when it becomes a product, so people have done about it. And Ian, I don't know what your Reddit screen name is. Not that I want you to share your Reddit screen name here, but yeah, no, it's it's worth. It is definitely worth talking about here. Yeah, you're up in Montana. Right? So let's do this. You're up in Montana. So yeah, no, it's great to hear from you, Ian, about that and making the connection. So, as you can see from my little thing, Discover Chalk, I need to add Reddit to this. So I'm Discover Chalk on X and Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and on Reddit. So we can connect that way going on in the future. So this is another aspect of normalization, right, which I want to call out. So it turns out that Connect Confectionery News is an industry magazine. This is taking a little while to load because of the data bandwidth that's going on here. The link to this is in the post and you can get to it. Is there a crisis in cocoa supply chains? Absolutely, yes. This is not a question. There is a crisis in cocoa supply chains. The crisis is not what they think it is, given who I see, right? I've heard Anthony Myers talk about what's going on. Yoke Ertz, who is the lead for Tony's Chocolate Lonely's Tony's Open Chain. These people, independent consultants, supply chain, sustainability. I don't know Paula. I don't know what she's going to talk about. I have an idea what it is that Anthony's going to talk about, what Yoke is going to talk about. But what's really interesting here is they're talking about the World Cocoa Conference in Brussels, 5 multinational stakeholders, right, the ISCOs, and here they are, the Dutch Initiative on Sustainable Cocoa, the German initiative, so Disco, Gisco, Swissco, Disco, and Frisco. I love those names all put together. But these are Northern European institutes. There's not one of these, right, located in a producing country. This is all about consuming countries. This is all about preserving the status quo, right? These goals are about preserving the status quo while talking about being sustainable, right, in my opinion. Right, we need to take very, very careful notice of who's doing what and what's going on. So this is an example of normalizing language that we need to avoid. Is there a crisis in cocoa supply chains? Absolutely, yes. What is that crisis? It's been 500 years of abuse. We've been abusing people. We've been abusing land, right? And we had this black swan, perfect storm stuff happen over the course of the last month or two that the market was not able to accommodate. And so we had stuff happening that we never anticipated. Sort of like what happened with long-term capital management in like 2006, 2008, whenever it was, right? So, all of a sudden, the world economy was, on the verge of exploding because the quants at long-term capital management, one of which is my kids used to play with one of their kids, right? So I was very, very close to it. It's like, we need to be really careful. If we do not address the underlying issues that lead to the continued abuse of economic imperialism and neocolonialism, yes, there will always be a crisis in cocoa supply chains, always. And I don't care what Yoke Ertz at Tony's Chocolate Lonely Open Chain. Hey guys, you're talking about, out of 4,000 metric tons or 3,800 metric tons, whatever it is, you guys are talking about tiny amounts, right? You're not having the impact you claim you're having in your marketing. Really, really important, right? Last thing on this rant in terms of the current state of the future of cocoa. This is again confectionery news. Now, one of the things that you need to be very careful of when you start looking at things. Oh, listen, I'm not going to log. I was logged in yesterday. I'm not logged in this morning. I'm not going to do that now. But what they're doing is that confectionery news never cites primary sources, right? And my guess is that this primary source is a Nestle press release, right? And I don't think that Anthony or anybody associated with this publication has done any primary research to be able to say what it is that's going on. Now, to some extent, I was talking with somebody down in Latin America over the last couple of days. It says, yes, people are investing more time in pruning their farms and doing a better job, and they're getting slightly better yields. Yay. It's not the solution to the problem, right? And it's not just Nestle that's doing this, right? This is just farmers are saying, oh, I have an opportunity to make more money. I'm going to invest more time in my farm to do this, right? So we need to be careful that, in terms of understanding, this is greenwashing, right? This is Nestle touting its own horn, right? And confectionery news not asking any questions about it. They're just reporting this press release straight. So we need to be careful, because what this does is it normalizes the status quo. We don't need to worry about any of these other relationships. It's just people, enter the Nestle Cocoa Accelerator program, they'll earn more money, right? Yeah, scale this across the planet, and we'll talk later and see how it works, right? In order to get it done, understand, is it scalable, right? Nestle, only purchase a small amount of the cocoa. Maybe it's scalable across some of the Nestle supply chain. And why are we only worrying about cocoa? We don't have any problem in sugar. We don't have any problem in dairy. We don't have any problems in the peanut supply chain that we have. It's like, why is everybody just focusing on cocoa? It really, really is a challenge for me to understand. So yeah. So also want to do a quick shout out to Corey Bear, who's in Palm Springs today. So not far from where I am. Although I think you regularly spend a lot of your time, Corey, in the San Diego area, if I recall, in and around there, in Palm Springs, so a little closer to where it is that I am in Arizona. So just a quick follow-up, because we're at the hour here. Number one is I've done 2 other episodes on the high cost of expensive cocoa. So episode 35 and episode 36. This is episode 42. Yeah, another Douglas Adams reference. 42, cocoa and chocolate are the ultimate answer to the question of life, the universe, and everything. Just want everybody to know. I did talk about Voyage Foods, who's doing an alt chocolate, getting 50 million in investment. So really, really, and we did talk about the Good Food Awards. So this is what I hate about the industry reporting about innovation. Endangered species chocolate threatens to disrupt. Oh my gosh, here's an innovation that's going to be disruptive of an entire trade show. This is going to be the single most innovative, the single most exciting, the single most interesting introduction in the history of chocolate. And they're going to disrupt an entire trade show with this. And what is it? It's chocolate dippers. So inside each one of these packages, looks like a lot of packaging. Inside each one of these packages, there are 3 batons. So long, skinny sticks of chocolate. And there's a little cup that's got something that a kid can dip their baton in. And it's an interactive experience and all this other kind of stuff. It's like Dip and Joy, a one of a kind interactive technology chocolate. It's like, this is not innovation, right? This is brand extension. I mean, it's one of the things I don't like about the way the industry reports on itself. As technical editor at International Confectionery Magazine, I mean, I may have articles which the ideas for them stem from a press release, but I never report press releases straight. I'm always doing primary and secondary research in order to figure out what it is that's going on. Right. There's some other things. So, hey, an investigation reveals that European cocoa companies' role in Liberian deforestation, duh, right? We should know that because cocoa companies had a role in deforestation in other places in West Africa, so this should hardly be a surprise to anybody. But we do need to keep it in context, because one of the things we learned from the EUDR regulation, which is a little redundant because that's R and EUDR is regulation, is that we know that cocoa is third or fourth on the list of contributing factors to deforestation in agriculture over the course of the last couple of decades. Number one and number two being palm oil, or oil palms, and soybeans. And between them, they contribute to more than 60% of all deforestation in the last decade. Sugar is not on the list because all that deforestation happened decades ago, so we don't count it, right? But there's no new deforestation, and the EUDR is about preventing new deforestation. So we need to be careful about that. But it should hardly be surprising that somewhere else in West Africa, that's part of the cocoa belt, that that big chocolate is not. Big chocolate can be considered to be a source of the challenges associated with what's going on. Again, sorry, I'm moving around two different screens, and I need to be very, very careful. And then finally, this is a challenge. So Malaysia concedes the global cocoa market. So Johara is the plantation and commodities minister, and in Malaysia, and he says the Malaysian Cocoa Board will invest locally 9.5 million, whatever the local dollar is, in cocoa plantation and rehabilitation projects. So one of the things that we've seen in the last little while is, let me see if I can find a particular graph. Yeah, let me show that. So if we look at this, right, this is the shortage and overage of cocoa that's been produced over the course of the last 40 years or so. And here we are in the 2022, 2023. This is why we're where we are in terms of pricing, right? Is that the underproduction has led to without the same reduction in demand. So reduction in supply without a concomitant reduction in demand has resulted in price pressure that grows things up, right? If you actually look at how much West Africa is behind forecasts, it turns out that this bar here should be quite a bit longer. And why isn't this bar longer? It's because of Ecuador, right? So Ecuador has now sort of because if we take into account the reduction in productivity in West Africa, then Ecuador's production right now has slotted in. So it's now maybe the second, if not the third largest producer in the world, right? And so we can't let this news of things like, yeah, no, absolutely, right? Malaysia could become a really, really important producer. They're already an important producer, right? Could they become the number one producer in the world? Yeah, if the government invests enough money, right, in it, they could become the number one producer in the world. But what does that do to all the farmers whose lives have been ruined over the course of the last 50 years? Ruined. How do we take care of all of the families whose lives and livelihoods have been oppressed for one reason or another, due to low wages or low prices for the cocoa, for the labor that they put into their farms, the devastation associated with, right, artisanal gold mining in Ghana, Galamsey, and things like that. If we just, all of a sudden, let's just shift over to Ecuador, or we just shift over to Malaysia, right? What does that mean? Are we going to abandon the responsibility we face towards cocoa farmers in other parts of the world? Now, and it's not. So it's interesting. I mean, the government of Vietnam many years ago invested in the Robusta coffee sector, and they went from nowhere, literally, to the third largest producer of Robusta coffee in about 10 years or something like that. And so with that kind of coordinated government investment, you can certainly get a government to be able to move the needle. But it's really important to know, when you look at the difference between specialty coffee and bulk and commodity coffee, that while specialty coffee only accounts for about 20% of sales, it accounts for roughly 50% of profits. And so I'm going to propose that one of the ways to deal with the issue is to make a long-term commitment to move away from cheap commodity and bulk cocoa to preferentially get customers. So it is the customer that's going to create the demand, right? Which is going to drive the chocolate industry, right? To focus on being better actors in their supply chains. And just demanding sustainability or demanding traceability, right, is not the way that we as consumers get to engage in that effort. And that what we can do is like I'm doing a chocolate tasting at the Prescott Public Library on Tuesday of next week, and so I locked in my local Sprouts, and I'm going, right. I've got a couple of small scale chocolate makers, so Orinoco Chocolate here in Prescott, Embers Chocolate down in Phoenix. So I'm doing two local craft chocolate makers. I was just at the Southwest Chocolate Festival, so Chocolate and Coffee Fest. So I have some Guittard, I mean, an American company that tries to do good. I know the people they're involved, but then I'm looking at Sprouts, which is tries to be a fairly responsible sourcer in many respects, sourcer in many respects. But I'm looking at, well, here's a brand owned by Mondelez, and here's a brand owned by Hershey, and here's a brand known by somebody else. Like, what chocolates do I go and when I want to put real industrial commercial chocolates on on um, on the tasting net along with all the other things I'm doing. And it's a real challenge to consciously make the decision when you're looking at price and you're looking at other things like that to say, you know what, I'm just not going to buy commodity chocolate made with commodity cocoa. So how do you, right? How do we, right, work within the communities and use the interest and the leverage we have to shift demand towards specialty chocolate? And specialty chocolate is chocolate made with specialty cocoa beans, right? And sort of paralleling the definition in specialty coffee, making it simple, straightforward, having that message. And if we can do that over the course of the next few years, what we can do is we can um, make the kind of disruptive change in the system that will end the abusive labor relationships, right? That will end abusive deforestation, the abuse of the land, the abuse of people that have been endemic in the system for the last 500 years, and more especially in the last 50. And with that, it's been an interesting show for me. Um, I hope it's been an interesting show for you. I'm going to say thank you to everybody who started at the beginning, who watched at the end, everybody who joined in. If you're watching on YouTube, please give the video a thumbs up if you found it interesting, want to support the work that we're doing. You can go over to thechocolatelife.com. Here is the homepage of The Chocolate Life right now. And here is the post for today's episode. And you can follow along at all of the resources that are associated with today's episode, everything that I showed you. And I'm going to look for a couple of other things, but all the things that I've shown you are here, and a couple that I didn't get to, but you'll be able to find all those resources. And while you're there, this green button, I'm logged in, it says account. You'll find a green button that says join. There's always a free membership. Again, I don't do Patreon. I'm not doing ads. The way that you can support me is to give me a thumbs up, give me a follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and then join the Chocolate Life. Always a free membership if you do have the resources to help support the work that I'm doing here. That would be very, very much appreciated. And if you do become a member, right, you will be able to take a look at the May member newsletter, and there are some special offers for members in that newsletter on, if you're in the business and you need some consulting hours, there's special offers for consulting hours for members, which are only available to members in the member newsletter. And with that, I want to say thanks to everybody. It's a Friday here in the United States, about 11:15 on Friday, the 10th of May. And I want to say thanks again to everybody who's been here, to wish everybody a great weekend, and to remember chocolate makes people happy, right? And so chocolate should be making you happy. We should all be working to make sure that chocolate makes everyone happy. and to remind everybody that if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Until the next time, this coming Tuesday is going to be an episode with Pashmina Deshawn, who's one of the co-founders of Bar and Cocoa in Denver. We are going to be talking about what it is to be a specialty cocoa distributor or specialty chocolate distributor in this day and age. And I saw Pashmina. We met at the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Fest in Albuquerque, and she was also at the Craft Chocolate Experience in San Francisco. And we're going to be talking about the differences in audiences and what it means and things associated with getting the message out. How do we spread the message and increase the demand for specialty chocolate? So I hope you'll join me on Tuesday to talk about that. But until again, everybody, have a great weekend, and I look forward to talking to you then. And